The Coaches Show this week with the head coach of the Bulldogs, Coach Brent Thompson, as we talk Citadel football here tonight over the next hour, as we always do. The Coaches Show brought to you by Cutwater Spirits here at Big John's Tavern in downtown Charleston at 251 East Bay Street with the head coach himself, talking about the game Saturday, getting ready for the game this Saturday at home against Western Carolina. Coach, good evening. How are you?
Well, I'm well. How are you doing today?
Doing well. Doing pretty good. We've had different setups here each week, and now we even have a speaker, so there's a little bit of like an echo. You almost hear yourself better out there than in the headset, so a little bit different tonight. But fortunate that the packed house tonight can certainly listen along with us, and you can listen along, of course, anywhere in the world, online using the ESPN Charleston app or here locally on ESPN Radio as we talk Citadel football over the next hour. And, Coach, let's dive right in and just ask you how things have been going so far this week. Here we are on a Wednesday getting ready for Western Carolina at home on Saturday. How's the week been so far?
You know, we had two really solid days of practice. We had Tuesday was a good day. I thought the energy, the tempo was there, the effort was there. Did we need to clean a lot of things up today? Yeah, we did. I thought we got a little bit better today. Some things that we had to clean up and a few things that we had to clean up from Saturday's game on Sunday. So Sunday's practice was good. It was kind of a good to get the mistakes out of the way, get those things cleaned up, and then on Tuesday and Wednesday get ready for Western Carolina.
Yeah, Western Carolina will be the opponent this Saturday as the Bulldogs get back into conference play this weekend. And as we continue to, throughout the hour, we'll look ahead and get ready for Western Carolina. Of course, want to touch on this past Saturday with the game against Furman and you know, be able to put that behind you, get ready for Western Carolina. But just broadly, your thoughts here a couple of days removed looking back on that game Saturday.
You know, it was a bizarre game. It was a game that you don't see us make that many mistakes in one game and really still have a chance to win the game in the fourth quarter. And, you know, so if we just go back to the first half of the game, and we started off the game hot. You know, we get a great turnover. We kick the ball down there. We get a great turnover. And sure enough, we go up 7 points. Now, unfortunately, we let up two really big plays. The only really downfall on the defensive side were those two big plays. We just couldn't get them on the ground. They caught us on a what we call an under boot right there to the tight end. Did a really nice job with it. And then they caught us on the 10-yard line after we went for it on fourth down and about 3 yards from the 10-yard line or so, right inside the 10-yard line or so. Unfortunately, both they converted that. But other than that, I thought we played fairly well, gave us a chance to win the football game. Offensively, we had our moments where we had some really good drives, we had some really good touchdowns, we had some really good opportunities to score. And then really, you look at it, the blocked punt hurts us, although it only held us, the defense came out and held them to a field goal. Blocked punt was a strange occurrence. The snap was a little bit outside of the area. The punter was a little bit outside the shield. And then the shield protector was just a little bit too far inside. And the next thing you know, it's a blocked punt. It's their ball in the red zone. And our defense stepped up, held them to a field goal, did a good job. We had our opportunities to go down there and make it a 7-point game right before the half. We put together a really nice drive in about 30, I think there was about a little bit more than 30 seconds on the clock. We get the ball all the way down to within field goal range for us, and just couldn't convert the field goal. So a couple field goals here and there, a couple turnovers here and there. You know, the next thing you know is you're still in the game, but you're not playing well.
Are those, as a coach, are those the sleepless nights? Like when you line up against a Coastal Carolina, you understand, hey, that's a good program. But the games where you feel like you left something out on the field, you know, you didn't play your best, you were still in there, are those the nights that, you know, leave you sleepless afterwards?
Yeah, absolutely is. You know, when you're beat fair and square by another team and you gave it your best out there, and yeah, there's certainly things that you can do to try to, you know, steal a win. And that's what we say, you got to try to steal a win. You got to try to win the ones that you're supposed to win. And we felt on Saturday that we matched up well enough to be able to do that, but we didn't play well enough, and our margin for victory last Saturday night was just so slim that you know, we let it get away with just way too many mistakes and, you know, errors that were really unforced errors. You know, field goals are unforced errors. That punt block is an unforced error. The block was no different than anything that we had seen already. It's a routine block, and they were just bringing guys off the edge, making sure that we punted the football, not getting a fourth down. I think we were 0 for 4 on fourth down on 2 of them. We really probably should have had, and then you know, not converting for points in the red zone. We had a holding penalty that was the cause of one of those field goal misses too.
Moving from that game forward, how do you make sure to clean up those things with your team while also making sure not to not to let that loss carry forward with some of the issues or mistakes from that game?
Well, there are certainly things that we did well, and we held ourselves in there. And I just spoke about it on defense, played extremely well. I think besides those two big plays, they had 140 yards total offense for the rest of the day. And talking about the 2-minute drill that we did right before the half, I mean, that's a positive. To at least give yourself a chance to be in that football game in the fourth quarter is a positive enough. Now, do we need to get better and continue to try to get our field goal kicker better? Yeah. Do we need to stay out of the penalty game? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a margin for victory. That's cut in half right there if you have all those penalties. We had 6 penalties. And apparently Furman didn't do anything. I think they only had 2 for 10 yards. But, I guess that's the way it goes with those guys.
Let's focus on a couple of those things you just highlighted. Yeah, your defense, like you said, outside of those 2 plays, like you said, 148 yards. After the first quarter, only 141 yards allowed over the last 3 quarters. So may have been the best performance from your defense this year. What did you like most about that side of the football Saturday?
Well, I like the fact that they recovered. They gave up 2 really big plays, and they didn't get down. They just played the next play after that. They didn't let it spiral out of control on them. They stopped the run, which was my big concern. I knew we were going to be able to get some pressure on the quarterback and force the younger quarterbacks to make some plays. My biggest concern with that was just watching the scrambles, let those guys out of the pocket, and the next thing you know, they can make plays with their feet. So we did a good job of containing them. We did a good job of containing the rush. About as good as we could possibly do against them, and we got some 3 and outs, and we lost the field position game when we got the block punt.
Specifically on that defense, Saul Diaz made his first start. He's a guy, second-year player. I know he was excited that as a recruit coming here. It was exciting to get him to come here to the program, put on some weight in the offseason. Made his first start Saturday, and right away on that first possession, he gets a sack and then a forced fumble. Just speak about his performance Saturday.
Yeah, it was a great way to start his career off, and he's a younger guy for us, and he's a guy that's developing for us, and had to play because Britton actually got his surgery, so he's going to have to sit out a couple weeks here, so we may be able to get him back for next week, and he's a key component to our defense. Kyler Estes is another one. Kyler's going to play there as well, and he's going to help Saul out and played in relief of Saul a little bit. So we're going to have to do it by committee with those 2 guys, and I thought for his first start, I think he's doing a pretty good job with it, and he's figuring the defense out, and he's learning how to play physical in there. So each week that goes by that he gets more reps, I think he's going to get better.
They always talk about with young quarterbacks, for example, if you look at the NFL, Kyle Trask is with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He gets to be in the quarterback room with Tom Brady. For a young linebacker like that in Saul, playing in that linebacking core that has so much talent here, how beneficial is that for the young guy to learn alongside these veteran and good linebackers?
That was the whole reason why we brought Anthony Britton on the trip last week. We knew that he wasn't going to play, but he was going to be a guy that was going to be with Saul all weekend long. He was going to be a guy that was going to be able to help him prepare for this particular game. Nobody does a better job of preparation on the whole football team better than Anthony does. Between Anthony and Willie, those 2 guys on the defensive side, Chris Beverly does a good job over there as well, but those guys really study what's going on. They can call out before the play even gets snapped.
I know I ask you every week about Dominic Poole because he's been playing really well the last couple of weeks. I think it was him. Maybe it was Destin Mack. There were 2 guys in the area that throw downfield. That was going to be a big catch. They swatted away, and Dom is leading the Southern Conference in passes defended in the secondary. So I know it's probably like a broken record I ask you every week, but Dominic Poole, his performance Saturday, just what you've seen from him now another week further into the season.
He's starting to gain more and more confidence. We've talked about his confidence building over the course of the last time that we talked about him. I think he's just a young player yet for us. He's a sophomore, technically a redshirt freshman for us. Didn't play at all in the spring. Did a really good job of coming back and really earning his spot back because he wasn't the starter going into the fall camp. But he's very, very talented. He's an extremely talented young man. A young man that was played baseball. He played football. He was a very good athlete. But it was actually Destin Mack that made the play on that one. Destin kind of recovered on the players. I think they had us beat. Kid really made a nice grab at it or attempt at it, and Destin knocked it out.
Yeah, they were both in the area. I know Jimbo Fisher, when he is recruiting quarterbacks, he says he looks at hand skill. He wants quarterbacks that, played a little baseball, used to turning a double play. For defensive backs, when you recruit or even when you bring a kid in and you say, maybe he fits better at defensive back, do you look at the ability? Because, the old joke is there's a reason why he's not a receiver. He's a defensive back. Do you look for that in your DBs? Because like I said, Dominic Poole leads the conference in passes defended. Do you look for those ball skills, the ability to make plays on the ball with your hands when you try to either recruit or develop these defensive backs?
You know, the two guys that come to mind, the two really key baseball players in my mind that are on our team right now, they have the ability, and they were both outfielders. They both can track the ball. Ryan Mccarthy is the starting right fielder for us right now. Is a wide receiver, but he's got extremely good ball skills. And then you got Dominic Poole, who was, I believe he was a center fielder in high school, but he's a young man that tracks the ball extremely well and can make plays. The other sport that translates well for us is basketball, because you're constantly dealing with the ball and handling the ball. They've got really good ball skills, and that's where D. Delaney was at. I mean, D. Delaney was a wide receiver in high school. That was converted, but he was a terrific basketball player in high school.
The other thing you mentioned from Saturday's game was that 2-minute drill before the half. I think it was only 22 seconds. You get down the field in 3 completions. Something that, again, you know, the stereotype, I guess, is when you think of that option offense, you don't think of that quick attack approach like we saw there. So you must have been pleased with the ability to at least give yourself a chance with the field goal, get down the field quickly through the air at the end of the first half.
You know, it's been a byproduct of what we've been doing the last, I would say, 4 weeks, 5 weeks or so, ever since we had the Charleston Southern game, where we had to have an up-tempo practice. So every day in practice, we've got a 5-minute period where we're up-tempo, and as I said, we're just working our 2-minute drill. So I thought it was a byproduct of the 2-minute drill that we work every single day. You know, typically what we would traditionally do is we would work a 2-minute drill on a Thursday, and that would be the only time that we would do it. But for the last 4 or 5 weeks, we've been doing a 5-minute, 12 plays in 5 minutes, and just trying to get up to the line of scrimmage and help our defense out, get aligned. We're going to see it this week versus Western. We saw it versus Charleston Southern. We saw it versus VMI. Just get aligned, get going pretty quickly. And it certainly has helped our offense out, and I think that was really what contributed to that drive.
What's that process like for the play calling to get situated for you as a head coach, but also that relationship with Jalen as the quarterback? How does that work to make sure while you're moving quickly, you're also, you know, everyone's on the same page and you can perform like that in a short amount of time?
Well, number one is you got to be calm as a play caller, and so that way you're calm in your emotions to the rest of the team right there. You want to hurry up and get going, but you also got to think about where do you want this ball to be placed. In a 2-minute drill, there's certain times where you can take it over the middle if you have timeouts left. We get that point, but there's also times that we've got to work the perimeter a little bit and trying to get the ball out of bounds. So you've got to specifically think of not only that play call, but what's the next play call going to be, and then what are you going to do if that ball is in bounds still, and how are you going to handle it? Are you going to clock it? Are you going to try to take a shot? Are you going to try to get a quick game shot in there? So you have to think in a 2-minute situation, you really got to be more than one play ahead like we traditionally are, and you got to think about how, what if it goes completely wrong? So the thought process on that particular drive was, okay, I'm going to take a shot here, see how this thing goes. If we get some positive yards and we create some momentum, let's just go ahead and continue this with this 2-minute drive. If not, then we'll run the football and we'll go ahead and kill it and go inside. And so it ended up working out well for us, giving us a chance. Unfortunately, we didn't make the kick, but certainly we'll get better.
As a head coach and play caller, is that the aspect of the game in which your mind has to move the quickest? You have the most on your mind, or like say the end, maybe not the end of the first half, but also the end of a close game in the second half. Is that the part of the game where you're, kind of thinking the most?
Absolutely is because you've got to be really on your toes and on your feet. You've got to understand where your timeouts are. You've got to be in constant communication with up top to kind of remind you what your down and distance is. And then what's the time on the clock? Where's the play clock at even? And then how do I manage it? So at the end of it right there, we were trying to figure out how we were going to get 5 or 6 more yards just to get us into a comfortable field goal position. So that was the last thing that we were kind of discussing as an offensive staff just before we attempted the field goals. How are we just going to get this thing, eke out another 5 or 6 yards of it? And then the other thing was maybe we just take a shot here. There's 7 seconds left. I was at, I'll never forget it, we were on about the 30-yard line, and Coach Houston was the head coach, and we were at Carson Newman just before the half in a very similar situation. And, wanting to go for it and just being the offensive coordinator at the time, I wanted to go for it, and here we're trying a vertical ball right there, and we should have been in field goal range right there. We would have been in field goal range until the quarterback just ate it a little bit too long, and we ended up running out of time. So I learned my lesson. I learned my lesson the hard way, and Mike taught me my lesson the hard way. So from there on out, you learn how to play the clock a little bit better than that.
Yeah, so maybe it was that moment. I was going to ask you if your process has changed at all from going from offensive coordinator, where you probably want to go, run plays all the time, time to be becoming a head coach. Have you, has your thought process changed a little bit in how aggressive you get in those type of situations?
Yeah, they absolutely do. And all it takes is really being burned once on it, right? You get burned once on it, and you kind of understand, okay, we got to make sure we get a quick game right here. We got to make sure the guys all know that we got to get out of bounds here. There's certain things that you take for granted that they should know, but they don't know all the time. So that's the situation that you've got to be very, very cautious of, because you don't want to lose an opportunity to put points on the board, especially at the half. So if you looked at it, we were going to go, we get an opportunity to get 3 points on the board, and then we get an opportunity to get the ball back and score. So that's a 10-point swing right there. And we really put together a nice drive in the second half, the start of the second half.
As you mentioned, the field goals, Colby with the 2 kicks, nobody's more disappointed than he was. But just in general, what did you see from him in certain terms of, the process and the mechanics and everything on the kicks?
That's not his kick right there. That's not his kicking style. I felt it a little bit when I saw the first extra point go through. I thought he punched at the ball a little bit. He's got a terrifically strong and accurate leg when he kicks it, and he's got a smooth motion. But I can tell at times when he starts to hurry it a little bit. If I can tell him his clock times if he hurries it a little bit. I can also tell a little bit when he's a little bit jumpy at it, and that was kind of the case on Saturday. I was hoping the first one would settle him down, and we had the opportunity for the second one. But, still hanging in there with him. He had a good 2 of them really good today, so we're hopefully getting better.
We'll continue to talk Citadel football here from Big John's Tavern and get ready for Western Carolina coming to town this Saturday, 2 o'clock kick at home at Johnson Haygood as the Bulldogs get right back to it with another conference game this week in their return home. We'll start to look ahead to the Catamounts coming up in a little bit as well, as we're with you for the next hour till the top of the hour here from Big John's Tavern in downtown Charleston with the head coach of the Bulldogs, Coach Brent Thompson. We'll continue to talk Citadel football. Coach's Show brought to you by Cutwater Spirits, and we'll continue to talk Citadel football after this all across the Citadel Sports Network. And see them even when we're not here, as Big John Tavern is now owned and operated by 3 Citadel graduates. It's the place to be, packed house here tonight as well. Big John Tavern in downtown Charleston, one of the oldest bars in downtown, and we're happy to be here every Wednesday. The Coach's Show brought to you by Cutwater Spirits. As we talk Citadel football, we'll start to look ahead to Western Carolina in just a little bit for the Bulldogs, getting ready for the Catamounts coming to town on Saturday, 2 o'clock kickoff. A lot has been made about some of the calls Saturday. I'm not going to ask you to comment on that. My only question would be just in general, as a coach, when you have some adversity in a game like that, what's it like for the coach to make sure your guys stay focused, even if it's a turnover, right? Something bad happens in a game, something out of your control. How do you make sure to keep the guys locked in that, hey, let's get them on the next play?
You know, it's really, really challenging because, especially in a game like that where you just felt like everything was just kind of just a little bit out of your control between the block punt, the missed field goals, and then a couple of penalties here and there. And, you know, penalties are going to happen, right? Well, I get it. You know, there's going to be certain things that are completely out of your control, and you're going to have a false start here and there. You're going to have a holding here or there. It's kind of the ones that are the little technical ones that are the ones that bother you the most, because there's certain times where you just don't make those calls. There's certain times where they can really impact a game. Those are the ones that really start to frustrate you a little bit more than the rest. Those are the hardest ones to recover from, because when you put together something in the particular call on Saturday night, it was just a perfect opportunity to call that play, and to take a 30-yard penalty on that play really is damaging. I mean, it's 7.5 minutes left in that game. We had the ball. We had the opportunity to have the ball within the 20-yard line or so. It was right around the 20-something, 30-yard line, right around there. We had the opportunity, and we're creating momentum. You just lose so much momentum after that, and we ended up with a 3rd and 3 that we had to worry about getting the first down at that point. Yeah. So. As angry as I was, and as angry as I was because we had that play set up for so long, we caught them in the perfect defense. You don't get those opportunities to run that particular play and be that successful at it, and then you have to turn around and now you've got to put a drive back together again and get a first down, which we did, and then unfortunately we turned it over on the next play. And what it was a forced play, and that was a play call that I wish I could take back. Just, you know, forcing it, trying to get a big play on first down, and really we could have just tried to continue to keep on getting first downs at that point and getting 3 and 4 yards like we had been doing. At that point, it's your play calls that kind of dictate the players a little bit. You know, you're going to call something that you're comfortable with, but you don't want to overreach, and I think I overreached a little bit.
Well, the only other thing I would ask you in just regards about officiating, just out of my general interest, is that, you know, like in the NBA, after the games, they release a report of at least the last 5 minutes. Here's what the referees did get right, maybe didn't get right. I know Coach Bauckham, he tells a funny story about a referee called him after a game and says, oh, you know what, you were right when we were arguing in the game. I went back, I looked, I got that one wrong. My question would just be good or bad. If the calls are good or bad, is there any sort of report during the week, anything from the conference that they send out and say, here, you know, here's the breakdown on what happened Saturday?
No, I mean, I would have to specifically ask for a clarification on a ruling. I would have to ask for an interpretation on a ruling, and they're really good about it. They will do that. They will give me an idea of what should have been called or what was called, or whether if it was a right call or not. But, you know, similar to what Coach Bauckham was talking about is I've only had 2 officials that have ever came up to me and apologized to me, right? And I would have so much more respect for the guy if he came up. You know, I can't even be mad about that, because, hey, we all make mistakes. Right. As long as you can admit the mistake, I've got no problem with that. As long as you learn from it. And it was, those guys are I will never, ever forget those guys. Those guys are really good guys in my book, and for officials, that's hard for me to say. Those guys are really, really good guys in my book, and I'll never, ever forget it, because they had the fortitude to come up to me and say, hey, man, I missed that call. That's on me.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
It should be like Japan, right, where those guys, the umpires got to walk out and in front of everybody say you missed the call or something like that.
Right.
I've got all respect for those guys.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Some accountability.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Everyone else is accountable.
You know, confess it to everybody.
Yeah.
You
know. This was mentioned in the press conference that you do every week on Monday following the games, but the positioning of your A-backs seems to be a little bit different this year, where you have them, you know, lined up in the backfield. I thought you gave a good answer on Monday. For those that didn't see the press conference, what's been behind that change, the adjustment with the positioning positioning of the A-backs?
Well, when I was coaching them, I had them pushed up a little bit more similar to what Army and Navy do. And originally, when I first started this, we went to this in 2012 or 13 when we were at Lenore. We went to this back positioning, and Coach Conti was coaching them. And we thought it gave us some benefit. And the only place that I really thought it hurt us a little bit was the pass game. Then we weren't getting those guys out enough. So when 2017, we adjusted them back up. And then when I hired Dom back, Dom was like, look, why don't we put them back where they were when we had them? I think it added something to it. And as an old player and as a guy that kind of ran the offense from the quarterback position, I said, you know what, you're probably right. I think this is probably a good time to go back to it. There's certain benefits to having it in there. I think those guys get a better start. We don't need to have as much motion. We don't get as many teams that are tilting their defense based upon our motion that way. And it worked out fairly well when we had Cam and Vinny back there, and guys can gain a little bit more leverage. To me, it gives us some of the benefits of being in the bone, and I love being in the wishbone. But there's some limitations to being in the bone that you're in spread, where you can throw it a little bit more and get on the perimeter a little quicker.
Speaking of those A-backs, Joe Douglas had a heck of a catch Saturday, and he's a guy that was playing defense. You move him over, his first career catch, so pretty impressive from Joe up that sideline. Yeah,
I originally recruited Joe as an A-back, played kind of a little slot back in high school, and I love Joe. I just wanted him on my team for most of his intangibles. He's just a tough, scrappy ham and egg player that we really like, and we really could use around the program. So we got him into the program. We were short on linebackers, so he said, let's just put him over there. He can do anything over there. He's going to stick his nose anywhere. Got to the point where we were getting a little bit better at linebacker. We had some pretty good linebackers in there, so we moved him over last spring. Played in the Mercer game, which was the first game in the spring. Really liked what he was able to do. Picked up the offense fairly well. Unfortunately, injured himself the week after the Mercer game and was out for the rest of the year. Came back this spring. Was doing a heck of a job for us. Made a spectacular catch on the sideline. Sold out a little bit on it. And good blocker, good with the ball in his hand. So I'm really looking forward to having another year with him.
You mentioned offensive coordinator Lou Conti. In our conversation with Lou for the pregame, the Ashley Furniture Home Store Stadium show, we were talking about Logan Billings, and here on the coaches show we've discussed Logan. But he said with Logan coming back, it's made Nwanze better at the B-back spot as well because of that competition. So I'll ask you the follow-up, but first let me ask you, have you seen that from Nwanze, that with Logan's return, not only does Billings provide something in that backfield, but it's also allowing it's making the other guys better as well? Yeah,
two things it does. One, it creates competition, but two is it also creates freshness. Like, those guys don't have to take all the reps at one spot right there. That can really beat on you. Tyler Renew was really beat on because he was the only guy that we really had. At some point, we had Isaiah Smith a little bit, but to be honest with you, is those guys, they take such a beating that you're going to need more than one guy, and we still have Storch there, which is nice too. So it's made Nwanze better. It's made Mike better. Mike's the senior. He's the guy that played behind Clay, so Mike's got a little bit of, hey, this is my time, this is my opportunity. And Logan's got a little bit of, hey, man, I'm a 100-yard rusher. I can bust one just like the rest of them. He's got a little bit of edge and a little bit of chip to it, and I love the way that they're playing. I wish we could have gotten them out, and we just couldn't get them out last week.
How important is it to not manufacture but create, have that competition at different position groups on a team?
Especially at that position, you need it at that position, because that's the bell cow, and that offensive line is the other one. Is if you can get 6 or 7, probably 7 guys, you need to be at least 2 spares there to be able to play on the offensive line, guys that you can move around. So, that's the other position I think is very, very important on the offensive side. The defensive side, it's secondary. You don't want to let those guys get too comfortable back there. It's always hard to find secondary guys, safeties and corners. But if you can do that, create a little competition, it'll be a lot better off for you in the long run.
I know we've talked about the special teams, but on the positive for the special teams, Cooper Wallace is #1 right now in the Southern Conference in kick return, average per kick return. And he seems to have done something that we don't really see from other guys, where he gets that running head start and takes the kickoff, in stride. So I guess a 2-part question. #1 being, where did that come from? Is that part of the plan? And #2, what have you seen or how impressed are you with Cooper in terms of the return game?
Well, there's 2 things. There's 3 things that I like that Cooper does, but there's 2 things that really contribute to that. One is we've got to square up the football all the time. And the second thing is we always want to rock into the ball. And that's one thing Coop does a really good job with. But it's not something that came naturally to him. Coach Ruck is the guy that's in charge of the returners. He's the guy that actually is on him every single day about, number one, squaring it up, and number two, getting a running start or rocking right into that thing if you can. Unfortunately, it hurt us a little bit is that line drive was hard to judge, and he's trying to run and catch the thing on the fly a little bit. Got a little bit too far ahead of himself and ended up, somewhere right around the 5-10 yard line or so and stuck us back a little bit. But the one thing that Coop does, the third thing I want to talk about, the one thing that Coop does when he gets the ball in his hand is the one thing the best kick returners do is they don't mess around. They do what we call hard, straight, and fast. All right, you got to go hard, straight, and fast. You make subtle movements, subtle cuts on the kickoff team. Otherwise, you go too far laterally and you're going to lose yards.
We'll start to look ahead to Saturday's game at Western Carolina when we come back. So the Catamounts are coming to the Low Country. 2 p.m. kick Saturday at Johnson-Haygood Stadium. If you can't make it out, coverage begins at 1 o'clock all across the network. But come out and see us at Johnson-Haygood, 2 o'clock for kickoff for the Citadel in Western Carolina. We'll start to preview that one with the head coach of the Bulldogs, Coach Brent Thompson, when we come back here on the Coaches Show, which is always brought to you by Cutwater Spirits. And we're hanging out here at Big John's Tavern in downtown Charleston, 251 East Bay Street, where we are every Wednesday talking Citadel football. We'll start to look ahead for Citadel in Western Carolina when we come back on the Coaches Show right here on the Citadel Sports Network. For Saturday, we'll start to talk about Western Carolina, but my Red Sox are getting it handed to them right now. For you,
I was just going to actually tell you that, but you ruined it for me. You ruined my joy.
It's been I'm glad we have this distraction at least to talk Citadel football for a little bit. But for you, when it's not football, it's hockey, right? What's the other sport that you or that you have on the TV more frequently?
Yeah, it's hockey and golf for me.
Yeah.
Everything else is kind of a little peripheral. You know, if the Mets were in the World Series or something, I would watch it, being a Met fan a little bit. But other than that, I don't think I can handle too many other sports.
Growing up outside of football, what other sports did you play?
I did play baseball. Mm-hmm. Yeah, wasn't really suited for basketball. Body type wasn't quite there. Baseball, I was a little bit of a scrappy catcher out there. I could ham and egg it behind the plate a little bit and really enjoyed it. It was the most action-packed position for everything else. Dad taught me to play catcher. Dad was a catcher right there and really enjoyed it. But other than that, those are my two main sports.
Mm-hmm. And, well, of course, now coaching football. Let's talk about Western Carolina, the team coming to town on Saturday. It's a new era for Western Carolina. It's interesting. You play all these teams just a few months ago, and not much has changed for most of them. But when it comes to Western Carolina, I'm sure quite a bit has changed with the new coaching staff coming in here just in the last couple of months. Kerwin Bell, the new head coach there, who's been a coach before. You may remember him from his days playing quarterback at Florida. So let's start with this, I guess. Just first off, Kerwin, do you know him at all from not even just since coming to the conference, but years past? You ever go up against him? Any connections with Kerwin?
No, I knew who he was, obviously, being the quarterback at Florida. I knew that he was at Jacksonville. I knew some guys that worked for him down there, had a really good run down there. Met him for the first time at the SoCon Coaches Media Day. Really good dude. Seems like a really nice guy. Has a different approach to football, has a different approach to Western, and you can see it right away with the roster. I think he turned over about 33 transfer players on that roster. And then I think he added another 20 or 30 just true freshmen to that roster. So that roster is completely different. Style of football is a little bit different. They're going to be an up-tempo team. They are, I think they're faster on defense. They've got some quickness to them on defense. They're pretty sound on defense. I like the way that they play defense. I think they're pretty tough on defense. But offensively, they're going to take the long ball and they're going to take a shot on you.
We'll dig a little deeper into them in all aspects, but as I always say, sometimes you have to ask dumb questions to get good answers. When it comes to getting ready for this team, the other teams in the conference, when they have coaches there for a while, I'm sure you and your staff, you know what to expect, you know what you like to do. You go back to the times you played them previously. When you have a new coach come in like this, who now has a new style, do you like having to learn a new style and coach, or do you prefer when it's the coach you faced 10 times in a row, you know exactly what you're getting from them?
Well, I certainly didn't like facing Mike Ayers every single year, and I always felt like he was kind of in my headset all the time. I always kind of felt like he was on top of me. So sometimes change is good, Sometimes change is good within the conference. There is that little bit of unknown, but there's that unknown on the other end of it too. So there's a little bit unknown on both ends of it. It's when you get a little bit too familiar with one another. The guy at ETSU's been there the last 6 or 7 years, about as long as I've been here too. So it's been challenging. It's been a back and forth. That's really been a chess game between what you do from year in and year out against those guys. Sometimes when you turn over coordinators, it helps you out a little bit as well, as they don't know what your new coordinator is going to do.
Now, for me, not to compare broadcasting to coaching, but I love, of course, the games themselves, broadcasting the game, but I'm also nerdy enough to love the preparation leading up. I try to find interesting tidbits that maybe other people don't know or don't see. From a coaching aspect, of course, I'm sure you love kickoff and game day on Saturday, but it has to be a passion to be able to work as many hours as you guys do and go through the film and come up with a game plan. Do you enjoy that part during the week, trying to come up with like, ooh, we got something good here that we can throw at them on Saturday? Do you like that part of getting ready for games?
Yeah, you know what? I tell you, Sunday and Monday are very, very stressful. And you're just trying to figure out who they are as a defense or who they are as an offense and what is their identity. And you can't really figure it out in a day. I'm a guy that needs to look at it, sleep on it, look at it, sleep on it before I kindly get a good feel for it. And I've got to constantly rewatch their film. I may have watched their film, the same game. I may watch it 4 or 5 times before I have a really good feel for it. And even then, I'll still go back for it because your mind can play a little bit of tricks on you. Maybe I thought I saw this, but I didn't see that. I may have wrote this down one way one time, and this guy could have been adjusted another way another time. And then you try to take as many tendencies as you can out of it. So from that aspect, I do really enjoy it. The days that I don't really like are Thursday and Friday because you feel like you're helpless at that point. Is you've got to limit what you're doing. You got to shut down any sort of creativity that you had, and you've got to go with what you got.
You mentioned their offense. We've touched on this a little bit in the last couple of weeks, but it is one of the faster-moving offenses in FCS football. What sort of challenges could they present offensively with what they like to do now under this new head coach?
Well, it's always a challenge when you face these kind of teams. Number one is just getting lined up, set up, ready to go. Substitutions could be an issue because if they're not substituting, you don't have any time to substitute. A lot of these teams, they'll run a deep route and they'll run the guy off, and the next thing you know is they got another guy coming in. You got to sub in that amount of time to be able to get the extra guys or other guys on the field. You got to change personnel as best you can. So matchups can be difficult, matchups can be challenging, and they're going to throw the long ball, so they're going to wear out your secondary pretty quickly.
You mentioned the freshmen, the transfers, a lot of new people in this program. Of course, obviously the new coaching staff as well. It's a young offensive line. It's a young team in a lot of places on the two deep, especially on the offensive line, and they have allowed the most sacks in the Southern Conference. When you go up against a team that is, young and maybe fairly inexperienced on the offensive line, do you try to take extra advantage of something like that?
You certainly do, but these guys get better every single week. When you're young and you're just building this football team, all you're really trying to do is just build for the future, try to give those guys as many possible looks, and by the end of the year, you're going to be a pretty good football team because you've played a lot of young players, and the potential for growth is there. You're not topped out with a lot of those guys. So this is where I think midway to halfway and a little bit beyond that is a little bit scary when you start facing teams like this.
They do have experience at the quarterback and running back position. They have a fifth-year quarterback, fifth-year running back. We don't know which quarterback is going to play on Saturday, but they do have some experience there. So, in the more important positions, depending on who's under center Saturday, they do have some experience, it seems, in some of the more important positions, at least offensively.
Yeah, the quarterback, if the transfer quarterback is there, I think he's a very good player. Obviously knows the system. He was with Kerwin at Valdosta. He was with Kerwin's son at Valdosta, and then followed him to Tusculum, and then, of course, followed him over there to Western Carolina, so he's very familiar with the system. He's going to be able to move pretty quickly and know where the ball's supposed to go. The younger player will be a little bit, well, I shouldn't say the younger player, but the backup quarterback will be a little bit different just because not as familiar with the offense as the starter was.
Western Carolina has committed 21 turnovers this year. They have a -9 turnover margin. It's the highest in the conference. In fact, 35% of the points they have allowed this year have come on short fields after turnovers. We've discussed this with your defense in the past, that when your defense has gotten turnovers, like any defense, they've been really successful. So how important at home against Western Carolina Saturday could it be to take advantage of that turnover margin Saturday? Yeah,
we certainly do. And I did notice it in a couple of the games. Is that when you flip on the defensive side, you're like, whoa, they just got the ball on the plus side of the 50. Life is good, right? And they actually got the ball on the 1 yard line a couple times. Those are things that you do notice. So it's going back to the other side. We have to be able to force and create a little bit of that too. Now, as I said, they're going to constantly get better, and they'll probably lessen those turnovers. And at this point, this is kind of like a year for Kerwin to just get everything established. The guy wasn't given a chance. He didn't even have any spring football. He came in the summertime.
On the other side of the football, you mentioned that defense. It's been interesting. The last 10 years, I think it's 10 straight years, Citadel has rushed for over 300 yards against Western Carolina. It doesn't matter, different players, different coaches, different venues. The Bulldogs have had success. Now a new coaching staff comes in here. You've been watching the tape, as you said. What do they do defensively? How do you like this matchup on that side of the football with your offense against this defense?
Well, as you alluded to before, it'll be a little bit of a learning curve on our end. We're not going to really know how they're going to attack us just yet. We're going to have to just base it upon some things that we saw on film or some things that we kind of go on our gut instinct on. So for the first quarter, the first probably 15 or 20 snaps, we're going to have to get a gauge on what they're doing and how do we need to attack it from there.
And we talked earlier about Cooper Wallace and your special teams. Well, for Western Carolina, statistically, they're the best return team in the conference in special teams. So we always focus on the offense, the defense. No one ever spends a whole lot of time breaking down special teams when you talk about games. But, of course, it is a third of the game that doesn't get enough focus. So when it comes to Saturday and a game like this, how important will special teams be?
Let me tell you something. It's not a third of the game. everybody says it's a third of the game. There's only we asked the special teams.
Defense,
No. We asked the special teams to go out there and play about 20 snaps, right? Those guys, the defense is playing. It's almost insulting to the defense. They're playing 100 snaps out there at times, right? The offense is out there trying to grind away at 70 snaps. I asked the special teams to go out there for about 15, 20 snaps. Hopefully, we're punting less than 5 or 6 times out there. Not a third of the game. You just got to be sharp for that third of the game, whatever you consider that third of the game to be. It's not an actual third of the plays. The problem is with it out there is the returner's good. The punt returner averages over 10 yards. If you can average over 10 yards a punt return, you're darn good. They're quick, they're fast, they're elusive. So that's where you've got to spend your time, because you're right, that 1/3 can beat you, all right? But you got to make sure that those guys are playing, whether offensively and defensively, those guys are mixed in, that they are playing those 20 or 30 plays, whatever it shall be. But to be honest with you, is we have got to play fundamental football on special teams in order just to get these guys on the ground, because they are quick and athletic.
Getting ready for Western Carolina coming to town on Saturday. You know, people will look at the record, they'll look at the numbers, the stats, this and that. But when you go up against a team like this, we've talked about the fast-paced offense. They are prone to some turnovers. They lead the conference in penalties, but they also lead the conference in penalties gained by their opponents. When you go up against a team that's a little like chaotic or breakneck, can that be dangerous to go up against a team that's going to move quickly, going to throw it all over the yard, going to take chances, and you don't know what may happen?
Absolutely. I think it's difficult. It's become very challenging, and that's the way that the world of football has gone. And I mentioned it plenty of times over, is they've gone to this up tempo, and they're just really trying to outnumber you in plays and take more opportunities than you can get. So that's going to be really, you're always going to ask me the keys to the game right there. You've got to limit their opportunities. How do you limit their opportunities? Well, number one, get them off the field, but number two, you got to keep your offense on the field. You've got to be able to make sure that they can't run 100 and something snaps. I mean, Sanford, they're going to run 120 snaps on an average day.
Right, yeah. Well, we will get to those keys, and we will continue to break down Western Carolina coming to town Saturday in our final segment upcoming here with the head coach of the Bulldogs, Coach Brent Thompson from Big John's Tavern, located at 251 East Bay Street in downtown Charleston. Come out and see us here every Wednesday night, or come out and see them when we're not here. Owned and operated by 3 Citadel grads, now Big John's Tavern in downtown Charleston, where we're talking Citadel football every Wednesday night. The Coach's Show brought to you by Cutwater Spirits. We'll come back with one final segment to get ready for Saturday at Johnson Haygood against Western Carolina with the head coach of the Bulldogs, Coach Brent Thompson. After this, all across the Citadel Sports Network. Wednesday from Big John's Tavern in downtown Charleston as we get ready for the Citadel and Western Carolina coming up Saturday, 2 p.m. kick. Come out and see us at Johnson Haygood, root on the Bulldogs. And if you can't make it, if you're not in state, you can always listen to the game. Coverage begins at 1 p.m. all across the radio network and also can always be streamed online. The Coaches Show every Wednesday night here, brought to you by Cutwater Spirits as we get ready for Western Carolina coming to town Saturday. We've been a few weeks in here at Big John's Tavern. What's an update on the power rankings for food items for you so far, Coach?
Well, made it back to the smash burger.
Oh,
all the way back.
One.
There's two things that I've had twice. Really enjoyed it. Was the steak sandwich and the smash burger on the second round of that.
Yeah.
So looking forward to it.
They got good stuff here.
It's eyeballing me over there.
Come out and check them out. Big John's Tavern, one of the oldest bars in downtown Charleston, now owned and operated by 3 Citadel grads. That's why we're here every Wednesday. Home for the next 2 weeks here. Western Carolina coming to town Saturday. You were on the road the last 2 weeks. So what does it mean? How valuable is it to now be home for the next couple?
It is nice to go on the road, and there's certain things that you do enjoy about, just kind of getting away from town for a little bit. The 2 road trips ended up being particularly difficult. We talked about the East Tennessee one. It's just usually not that bad of a trip, but you get caught in traffic. 26 is tough anymore. You turn a 4.5, 5-hour trip into a 6-hour trip, and all of a sudden that becomes very long. You top that on top of a 2 o'clock return, and then Greenville's not a bad trip. I thought we had a good trip up there last week. It's just, once again, you're just kind of sitting around the hotel all the way till 2, 3, 4 o'clock until you can kind of get back and get ready to go before the 6 o'clock kick. And then you're getting home again at a late hour. So happy to be back at home. It'd be nice to get back in the groove here. And then at the end of the year, we've got 2 really long trips again that are going to be a challenge.
You mentioned those trips. When you have a trip like that coming off a loss, you get home late. Do you get any sleep anyways, or you up?
No, I really didn't sleep that well at all. It's just the way that the game went.
Yeah.
Didn't sleep with me. Didn't sit well with me. Number one. Number two is you're conditioned to get up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning anyway. So you get in at 2, you're maybe getting to like 6, 7 o'clock at best to be able to sleep. And then you're back in the office by about 10 o'clock, getting ready. I've got to get in there a little bit earlier than the staff, just because I like to watch the defense and the special teams film before I watch the offensive film with the staff.
As we look ahead to Western Carolina Saturday, you mentioned Anthony Britton earlier, but just each week updating things. How's the health of the team right now?
No, overall, I think this is the healthiest we've been in a long time. We're still going to have a couple of guys out that have been out for extended times, but as far as kind of the nicks and bruises, we had a couple of guys that really didn't practice last week, a couple of guys that didn't play last week. Chris Beverly didn't play last week, which is key to our secondary. He didn't play last week, but he should be good to go. He'd be ready to go this week.
Have you seen any sort of impact from the spring for the guys that did play in the spring to then come back here in the fall? Any impact so far?
There is. There are some of those guys. It's been quite a bit. Unfortunately, we still have some fall. Some spring injuries lingering around. I mean, Clay Harris is one of those guys. Noah Albury is one of those guys, and those are guys that really should be helping you out right now.
For Western Carolina on Saturday, 2 o'clock kickoff at Johnson Haygood Stadium. Come out and see us, see the game in person. Come join us at Johnson Haygood. But with a few minutes left, as I always ask you, you alluded to it earlier, and you may have mentioned them already, but the keys to this game Saturday against this specific opponent.
Well, it's going to be the possession time. And we had about 38 minutes a little bit more. We almost 40 minutes of possession time against Furman. So we had some pretty good. We had a 16-play drive and a 13-play drive. You're going to need those kind of drives against these guys. You want to keep their offense off the field. That's a little bit more frustrating for them. That's an up-tempo offense, sitting on the sideline, which is nice. It also helps your defense because your secondary is going to get tired and exhausted. So that's going to be key to it. And then turnovers, as you mentioned. I think turnovers are going to be helpful for us. Create short fields is. You noticed last week we got a short field, we got a touchdown. We don't get the short fields, you're going 16 and 13 play drives.
Yeah, you mentioned that time of possession. They're a team that obviously likes to move quick. You're a team that will huddle and not necessarily is in as big of a rush as Western Carolina. You always talk about a lot in basketball that you want to impose your type of game on the other team. Is it the same idea with football that you want to make sure you're playing your game?
You want to set your tempo.
Right.
You don't want them to dictate your tempo. And oftentimes they'll do that if you're behind or if they have the football. So you want to make sure that you dictate the tempo. You kind of operate on your own terms. When do you want to pick it up? When do you feel it's your time to kind of accelerate a little bit?
Haven't asked you at all about the quarterback. They do say it's the most important position. What would you like to see from Jalen on Saturday?
Well, you know, he's going to have to. The one thing that Jalen has done well recently, let me start there, is he's run the ball extremely well. He's had over 100 yards. He threw it a little bit better than he did the week before. I thought he settled in the pocket a little bit better. Hit some pretty key throws in there. So we need to make him, we need to allow him to be able to run more of the offense. And I keep on saying that, and it's more me than anything else. I keep on trying to convince myself is just cut him loose. Is really when he ran. In the second half, there was not a whole lot of adjustments being made. Our adjustments were very, very small and tiny. The adjustments were, hey, we know what they're doing. We know what the plays are. Now we just got to settle in and run these specific plays. And that's how he went down with 2 really big drives right there. And he executed those plays, and he handled them really well.
Well, the Bulldogs will get ready to take on Western Carolina come Saturday, 2 o'clock kickoff. If you can't come join us in person, if you're out of state, whatever it may be, you can always catch the game online or on the radio network at 1 p.m. Carried locally, 102.1 FM, 1450 AM, and online. Just go to thecitycharleston.com or download the free app. But we hope you'll come out and join us Saturday, 2 p.m. kickoff for the Citadel in Western Carolina at Johnson-Haygood. Coach, appreciate the time as always, and wish you the best of luck on Saturday.
Thanks, Luke. I'll see you out there, man.
Absolutely. That's Coach Brent Thompson, head coach of the Bulldogs. Until next Wednesday here from Big John's Tavern. It's been the Coach's Show brought to you by Cutwater Spirits. We'll talk to you next Wednesday here from Big John's Tavern, and we'll talk to you Saturday for the Citadel in Western Carolina. 2 p.m. kick. Coverage begins at 1 p.m. right here all across the Citadel Sports Network.